everyone. So today I thought I'd do something a little different. I'm going to be looking at Endgame. To start with, I thought maybe we should talk about Endgame in general, like why you should learn Endgame. So, in Go, you basically have to make decisions across the game. There's not going to be anything on the board for just a little bit. You basically have to make a lot of decisions about where to play, your strategy, and stuff. Um, but if you don't know if you're winning or if you're losing, that really drastically changes your strategy. If you could win without fighting, then there's no need to fight. If you're behind, you better make a way to get some extra points or try to come up with some plan to catch up. Um, and so part of that is knowing how Endgame normally plays, how you expect the rest of the game to go, how it's going to finish. If you don't have an idea about that, then you're going to be very uncomfortable playing Go, unless you kill something or have a huge lead. So, it's very common for professional players to be comfortable, and even strong Dawn players, like maybe 6 Dawn plus, 5 Dawn plus, to be fairly comfortable if the game is, 3 points or less. Like if they have a 3-point lead, or for me, if I have a 5-point lead, I feel pretty comfortable that I can win that game. Almost no matter what stage I'm at. Unless it's really, really early. But even then, I feel pretty comfortable. And you're like, how can you tell you have a 5-point lead at, that such a stage? It's true you can't count exactly, but you can have a guess or like a estimate. Okay, so that's kind of like why you want to know how to count, know how to estimate, basically learn Endgame. There's 3 components to Endgame. I'm really only going to focus on 2 of them, and one of them I'll talk about a little bit, but it's really like the more you play, it'll be clear when I say what it is, I guess, why I'm not going to talk too much about it. So the first part of Endgame is counting. So you have to be able to look at it, like territory, and be like, oh, that's 8 points, or oh, that's 10 points, right? Something broad like this, and be like, oh, this is roughly 9 points, right? Because I'm filling in these spaces. But without them, you're like, oh, that's, roughly 9 points. I can't really reduce it more than that unless I have some outside stones. I have an enclosure, if K just doesn't lag, like this. Oh, well, this has a weakness at this point, so let's say this is filled for some reason. This is roughly 15, 18 points, or 17. Depends a little bit on how you count. Actually, sorry. This is actually more like 20 points. My border is here. Here. So this would be my border. And I roughly count this as 9 plus 6, 15 plus 4 is 19. So a little bit under 20 points, but roughly 20 points. You could also count it like this. Depends on how you expect the game to go. So, you could also say it's like 3 by 7, so 21 points, or 19 plus 2. In any case, you want to be able to count. So that's the first part. I'll go into more of these all in a bit, but I'm just going to briefly cover them all. The second part is knowing how much a move is worth. Like, for instance, we have this kind of situation. Let's say it's not too big, but how big is this move? How big is it? 6 points double sente, 3 points gote with a follow-up that's worth 4 points, so really it's like 7 points if it's the follow-up is sente. Follow-up's not sente, then 5 points gote. You have to, if you don't know this, then you don't know where to play. If there's a bunch of different places, like say that's there, and you probably can tell that the right side is bigger than the Hana here, if it's like this. But if you weren't very good at counting or didn't know how to evaluate the end game, then you don't know exactly what the end score will be, and you could be off by, 5 points, 10 points. It's quite a bit. That might not sound a lot if you are a weaker player, like maybe single digit Q, double digit Q. You're like 5 points. Well, I lose games by 20 points, right? And that's true. You lose games by larger margins, usually if stuff dies. But you have to think about Komi, right? Like, if you compare it to Komi is 6.5 or 7.5, depending where you play. Excuse me. Um, so like if you lose 5 points in endgame, that's almost like passing. That's like almost giving away Komi, which is really really huge, right? That's pretty big. Okay, and then the last component of endgame is like, let's say, it's basically a reading skill. So like, let's say you have a shape like this. This would never happen, but White would almost always play here if he's going to do this, but let's say it happens. And you have to figure out, okay, what's the best endgame that Black should play in this corner? If you just play the Hana like this, normally this isn't the best. White will have roughly 7 points, I think, or 6 points, sorry. And the way I'm thinking about that is this move is basically White Sente usually. If it's not, then it'll be this space, which will be 5. At the same time, this is White Sente, so you can already see 5 points, and then if the border is here, it's 6 points. So yeah, you get one, you reduce White by 1 point, but is that really best? Probably not. Black can actually play here, which is a lot more severe. And now White has to answer here. Sorry, not there, here. And then if you have nothing on the right side, then you want to Hana on this side, and if you have nothing at the top, then you want to Hana on this side. If you don't, right, White just dies. And you're like, okay, this might look nice, but doesn't it, White's getting more because he's capturing stones and stuff? Not necessarily. Actually, not at all. Because if it's like this, and you get to the very end of the game, White can't play here, because now it's a Seki, right? White can't approach, because it'll get captured. So actually, White has to spend moves to take these stones off the board eventually. So really, White only ends up with 5 points. 1 point less than our 6, and this is in Sente. And you get to choose which side is more valuable. Of course, it's a trade-off, right? If you have territory on both sides, then it's probably better just to play the Hanas. But you can also just Hana on both sides too, so I don't think it's really that much better. Actually, maybe it's not better at all. Maybe, no, not really. So it's good to know. Similarly, this shape. So many games people play, Hana and Sente and Tenuki, which is often good if you want this side, but if you want the other side, then this way is better, because White can't, or I guess White can take, but White eventually has to come back here, and this reduces White by more in Sente, which is, pretty good. You stop this kind of endgame stuff without that stone. So yeah, but this kind of thing with what's the better endgame sequence, I'm not going to talk too much about, because I'll talk a little bit about it briefly when I get to Sente, which won't be in this video. But generally that kind of stuff, the Tesuji for endgame and things, you'll learn through experience. It also depends a lot on your reading ability, which just improves naturally as you get stronger. So I'm going to be talking more about counting and estimating the value of a move. I kind of jumped over that second part. The second thing I'm talking about is knowing how much a move is worth. And I kind of accidentally blurred into, sorry about that. So let's talk about it a little bit. These two are both very important and both interrelated. The first thing I want to talk about is a really simple position. I'm taking this, I've seen it in a lot of places, like it's on Sensei's if you look at Miai counting. Oh, I'm just going to mention this briefly. I count with Miai counting, which is not the same as Deidi counting or swing counting, which is, I think, how most people in the West have learned to count, the players who do count. That's fine. Miai counting offers a lot of advantages over Deidi counting. It's more exact. You can count exactly how much is going to affect the end score, which you can't do with Deidi counting. So with Deidi counting, you actually have to just judge what the biggest moves are, read them all out, and then count, which is kind of complicated and a lot of effort for me. You have to visualize a lot. Miai counting, you can get a number and know exactly that if you play that move, it's going to be worth that many points, regardless of, it's going to actually change your score by that much, which is helpful. It's also helpful because for things like evaluating ko is a lot easier to understand. You can also count positions much more accurately, I feel. That'll become clear in a bit. So I'm going to just take a very simple position. Assume all stones are going to basically be alive, unless it's obvious that they're not. And I'm just going to say, okay, here I want you to count how many points each side has. And you could pause it now. I'm not really going to stop too much, so when I ask questions, just pause it if you want to know, if you want to figure it out, or take a guess. In this case, I'm offering some filler because it's the first time. Otherwise, yeah, I'm just going to keep going because I don't want this to get too long. Especially because I know Endgame I'm going to have to write, but do a few videos for because it's quite an involved topic. I made an Endgame video a long time ago. It wasn't wrong, but it wasn't very clean or right, so this is my attempt to make it a little bit better. Anyway, so here, most people say, okay, it's pretty obvious. Black has 3 points here, white has 3 points here. How do we evaluate the one stone in the corner? If you normally use the ED counting, you'll say, well, it's 1 point or 0 points if white plays first and 2 points if black plays first. That's great. You know the swing value, it's 2, and if someone plays first how much it is. But I don't think it's you don't know in a game who's going to play it first, like if there's multiple positions of it. And at the same time, it feels like this stone probably black's has a little bit more weight on it than white. So I'll explain how you should do it, and then after that I'll give another method of proving that that's the right method. So, or that it makes sense. So first, we can just evaluate. If black plays first, I'm so sorry about the phone. If black plays first, it's 2 points for black, obviously. I already said this, I guess. But if white plays first, it's 0 points for both sides. So if you average it, then it's 1 point for black. And that means that a move here, right, now becomes 2 points total, so that means that the move was worth 1 point. And that makes sense. If white plays, then it goes from 1 point for black to 0 points in total, right? You could say for black, I guess, but also for white. So the move changed the value of the area by 1 point. So this is true in deity counting as well as in Miai counting, but basically, if you play a move, it's going to be the same value no matter who plays it, because you have to figure out what it's going to be worth for both sides. So a lot of people will be like, okay, so you're counting this as 1 point for black. That's kind of weird. Like in this kind of case, like I would say black has 4 points and white has 3 points. And to a lot of people that'd be pretty strange, because it's like, well, you don't know that, but you kind of do. It makes sense to average it in a sense. So I'm gonna prove it. You've probably seen this before. I think there are many places that this has come up that you could look. So yeah, it's pretty common method. It's in books and senseis, I think. And yeah. So anyway, so you look at this position and you're like, okay, so if it's really 4-3 in this side for black and 4-3, it's the same position, right? So 4-3 for this side for black. Then the end score should be, what, 8-6? And, okay, let's see. So black plays 1, then white plays the other. And, oh, look, 3 plus 2 plus 3 is 8. I can do math. And 3 and 3 is 6 for white. And it doesn't matter who plays first, right? Because there's an even number. The position is duplicated, so the order doesn't matter. White can go first, and then black can go. And it's still 8-6. So you could see that makes sense. You also notice that, if black plays here, white tenukis, and black plays again, black played 2 1-point moves, right? So black should have 4 plus 4, so it's 8, plus 2 is 10, 6. And here we have 3, 4, 5, and 3, 4, 5. So it's 10-6. The move, the value of the move also makes sense. Yeah. So this is pretty simple. It'll almost, in some ways, it'll almost never happen in a game, but in many ways, very similar situations do occur. So let's look at a slightly, basically the same example, but just reinforce the point. So how many points does black have here if you're counting? And I would say 5. You know, there's 3 here, and there's 2 here at the triangle points. And these 2 are not obvious unless you know this method. But yeah, it's 2 points. And then you have to say, okay, how much is it worth to capture them, or for white to save them? It's also worth 2 points. And you notice I'm not using words like gote or sente. I'll use those words later, but for now we don't have to worry about them. Okay, so this is fine and all. What if, it's not such a clean case? What if white saves the stone, white can gain something? So let me try to think of a position quickly. Something like, something like this. Yeah, let's deal with this. Whoops. Yeah. So, okay, how much is this space worth? Let's make it an easier question so it's easier to interpret. Who's winning in this area and by how much? If I change it like this, then these 2 areas don't really matter, so you really don't have to count this area. Well, okay, we say black plays first. Oh, black has 4 points here. And if white plays first, white has 2 points. So you might say, oh, that's 2 and 4, 6. Okay, it's 3 points. Not quite. We have to count. White's points are not the same as black's points, right? So the convention is to say, okay, white's points are negative. So what you could say is black here has a score of 4. And if white plays, then the score is negative 2. Or you could flip the whatever you want to be negative. I usually just call the other player negative because it's convenient. But you could. It doesn't really matter as long as they're different. So if you average those 2, it's 4 and 2, so you get 2 and divide by 2, so it's 1 point. And remember, so 1 point means it's positive, so that's 1 point for black in this case. Now that doesn't mean that playing here is worth 1 point. Playing here is worth much more than 1 point. So remember, if black plays, it becomes 4, and if white plays, it becomes negative 2. So the move is worth 3 points. You went from something that was worth 1 point, and then you're going either to 4. So black plays, black gains 3 points to go up to 4. Or if white plays, then the score becomes negative 2. So you go 1, 0, negative 1, negative 2. So white's move gained 3 points for white. That's another thing that's implicit in DED and MI counting. If your opponent loses a point, it's the same as you gaining a point, right? It's, I guess I should say that to be clear, but I think it's pretty obvious. Okay, so that's very important to consider. But maybe our boundaries are not so clear, right? Maybe we have, more than one stone, like in this area. Maybe it's something like this, right? How much would it be worth to capture, You're like, okay, I'm counting, I don't really quite understand. Let's just try it and see. So how many points does black have in this column or corridor? Well, if black plays, that's 8 points, right? 6 plus 2 is 8. And if white plays, maybe it's not clear. Okay, let's try to figure out how much this is worth. If black plays, it's worth 5 points, right? 4 plus 1. And if white plays, there's no points there. Okay. So at this point, we could say that black has 2.5 points in this column. And now you might be like, fractional points? How does that work? But it's when you're averaging, it makes sense. You might have fractional points. And that's actually really important with MI counting when you get to things like double co or just co in general, that you're not always going to be having even amounts of points. So 2.5 points. If you're hung up on that, you could probably read up a little bit more on it, but it makes sense. Generally, by the end of the game, all the halves and the partial points, they'll collapse or add up back to a whole number. Okay, so this is 2.5 points. So if white plays, it becomes 2.5 points, and if black plays, it's 7 points. Or sorry, not 7. It's 8 points. So that means, average that 2.5 and 8. That's 10.5. So divide that by 2. You have 5.25. So right now this is worth 5.25 points for black. Okay, that's useful. Maybe the quarter is not so useful, and that's true. I often drop the extra stuff. But the 5 points should be useful at least. Okay, so then how much is it worth to play T6? Well, we went, we go from 5.5 to 8, or 5.5 to, what was it, 2.5? So that means that it's worth 2.5 points. T6 is worth 2.5 points. Okay, cool. Maybe useful, maybe not. One way to think about it is if you had a group that was like this. I thought I made this room private, but I guess not. A group like this, and you want to save these stones, how much is that worth? That's worth 3 points. You can see that if black plays it's 0, and if white plays it's 6, so it's or -6. So the score there is -3, and if you play a move, it goes to you either add or subtract 3, right? Whoever plays it. So that move's worth 3 points. So you might say, oh, this move looks really big because it's threatening to save these two and everything. And black might be like, oh, I want to play here because I'm getting 3 stones and 2 extras compared to just getting 3. But actually, just in terms of the point score, there is a little issue with the amount of moves, right? But just in terms of the points, if there's like a bunch of endgame moves and this is like the size they're at, it's bigger to play and save the 3 stones directly like this. This is worth 3 points. Whereas playing here as white or black is only worth 2.5 points. And you can start to see, oh, this is kind of becoming applicable. We're starting to get a handle on how this feels. Let me just change it slightly. We could try another case. I probably should have done this case first. It's a lot simpler. Like this. How many points does black have? In this case, it's obvious it's black's because white can't gain anything, but in a general situation, you have to say how many points can someone get. And then on top of that, how much is the move worth? So, black plays. Oh, 5 points. Easy, right? What if white plays? Well, this is the one we did earlier, isn't it? This is 1 point for black. So, when we're at this stage, we say 5 and 1, 6, divide by 2. Oh, 3 points for black. And how much is T4 worth? We go from 3 to 5 and 3 to 1, so it's 2 points. You don't have to check it with both sides. I'm just doing that for the sake of this might be new to a lot of people. It'll always be the same, right? It should be in the middle because you're averaging, and yeah. But anyway, yeah, so playing here is worth 2 points. It's pretty cool. Let me ask you another question. Maybe you have some shape in the middle. This is often actually how this conversation comes up for me. You have some shape in the middle, and you're like, okay, how many points is that? Is this for, black? Oh, well, it's half a point, actually. And you can do it 2 ways. You can average it, right? 1 point or 0 points, so average is half. Or, you could make multiple positions like I did at the beginning, and you could prove it that way if, you're not convinced. Okay, I think that's about as far as I want to go for this video. Next video, I will probably talk a little bit about assuming borders. Maybe Ko, depends on how far the borders can go. And Sente. Actually, I might talk about Ko first, but I think that's far enough for this video. It's very easy to come up with examples, by the way. So one pattern you might have noticed already is, I make any number of stones. The value of the stones to save them. The value of the area, first off, is equal to the number of stones, so 6. Saving them or taking them is also worth the same amount, 6, right? 12 and 0. You start to notice these kind of patterns. You can very easily make really complicated, not complicated per se, but reading intensive endgame situations. I'm just trying to cover the basics, but you can make something like, how much is it worth to capture this group? Right? and you're like, well, okay, white plays, this is 10 plus 15, 17 points for white, if white plays first, right? This is 10 plus 4 plus 3, 17. And if black plays, it's 3 or negative 3. So you do negative 17 plus 3 or 17 plus negative 3, depending on your style or however you want to do it. But you get 14 and you divide by 2 is 7. So locally in this area, the score is worth 7 points for white. And if black saves the group, that's a point swing. Did I do that right? 17 plus 3 is 14. Yeah, so 7 points for white. And if black plays or white plays, we're getting a swing of... Sorry. I should have worked this out first. 14 plus 3 is 11. Oh, I didn't divide by 2. That's my... Wait. Okay, sorry. I got mixed up. Okay, if white plays, it's worth 10, 14, 17 points. Okay, and black plays, it's worth 3 points. So if you average the two, so 17 minus 3 is 14. So this is worth 7 points for white. The move here is worth 10 points. And it makes sense. You're going to kill or save a group. It's huge. Right? If you're at 7 and black plays, you go to the other side. You go to 3. So if you're negative 7, so you add 10 to get to 3. Or if white plays, you at negative 7, and then you get to negative 17. Yeah, it makes sense. It's 10 points. And that, you could kind of calculate it for, like, how much is it worth to kill a group versus, how much is a monkey jump? I'll go into those a little bit more in depth later. But yeah, I just wanted to set the groundwork for some future videos, and hope you enjoyed listening and kind of learning a little bit about Endgame. Bye, all.